first thing that an Aboriginal person would do in the scrub, particularly if they're on their own, would be to grab hold of the plant and they would rub, they would rub it on their skin. Now when you stop and think about it, it makes sense, doesn't it? They're not ingesting it, right? And if there's a rash or some reaction to that, okay, you leave it alone, right? If you survive that, I shouldn't say that. If there's part B, no, but if there's no reaction to that at all, they would then wet their lips and then rub it on the outside of the lip. Once again, not ingesting, all right? So by rubbing it on the outside of the lips, waiting to see if there's a numbness or a tingling sensation or some reaction, the lips go big or go red or whatever the case may be, obviously you leave it alone. After that, the third stage is you can actually ingest it, all right? But there's a trial and method that we have in our own country and a place called Gummy Wiggle, and a lot of you people probably heard of Gummy Wiggle, just outside of Inverell. And we have a what we call an Indigenous plant in that area there. It's called the Inverell cycad. And I don't know the scientific name, I'm not into science as far as that goes, but the Inverell cycad is particularly found in the Gummy Wiggle National Park. And it's the root ball of the actual cycad is edible. And this is where I'm talking about Aboriginal law, L-O-R-E, and passing down information. But it's also highly poisonous, extremely highly poisonous, even though it's edible. So how they worked it out is they would get hold of this ball and they had to eat something, so that was it, and they would tie flax around it and they would throw it into the water and let it leach there for 10 or 12 days until all the toxins were actually washed out of the root ball, and then they could eat it. That could have been trial and error, that one, I don't know. why 10 or 12 days and not 6, I don't know. But yeah, so that's just something I just wanted to share with you about how people do adapt, and that would be no different to anybody living in a harsh environment where they'd have to go in and learn what's out there in the wilderness and learning how to live with it, you know. But we can take you out into country and people say, oh, look, there's nothing here to eat, but I guarantee you within a square metre I can show you what's edible, what's not, what's medicinal, what's not, all that sort of thing. It's still out there. It's probably in decreasing numbers, and with all due respects to Maarten and his great presentation, and I really did enjoy it, Maarten, it was great. But we also have a saying too that whereas the European people have learned to live off the land, which is fine, right, we've got to have farmers, but Aboriginal people learn to live with the land. And that's something that I've always remembered, that was taught to me. So, but living with the land preserves things, but this is going back in the days when there wasn't chemicals and there wasn't feral animals and all sorts of other things. It's just going right back to the bare basic nature where how it was and how it was meant to be. So that's about 50,000 years of cultivating and getting ideas down, trial and error, I guess, to a certain degree, but getting it right. So that's part of the culture and that's good. So thanks for letting me share that with you.
And so is this three-step process something you've ventured into yourself, or are you trusting your elders? Are you game enough to do it yourself?
Well, I'm here today, so it must have worked.
But I mean, you mentioned a sort of a common theme running throughout.
Yeah, but we don't write a lot of that stuff down. We pass it down word of mouth. But yeah, sadly, but that's the reason why Michelle helped me write the book, but the other books that we produce as well, is to keep that knowledge alive. It's very, very important because I'm always a great believer that if we can mix our culture in with the European scientific nature, not culture, and put them together, you've got a pretty deadly combination between cultural heritage and natural resource management. Pretty cool.
I have tons of questions, but I'll open it up to the floor. Anyone? Oh. I'm going to go pink shirt.
I'm wondering...
Oh, there's a microphone coming. Don't be shy.
I'm wondering what access is available to Wattle Ridge for the general public? Is it a closed site, or I know I've seen brochures to say that you can go there, but is it readily available, or do you have to have permission? How does that work?
It's a bit like, can I answer that one? Yeah. It's a bit like most places, you just don't walk in and take over, so to speak. If you contact Banned by Business Enterprises, Banned by Adgyra, all right, they are the actual owners of the IPA, the Wattle Ridge, and look, we're show-offs. All right, but we do like to know who's going out there for conservation reasons. But it's also, when you do go out there, the rangers are such lovely people that they just can't help but showing off what they've got out there. They take you to the lookouts, tell you the traditional stories associated with the land, take you to the Kukra art site and all sorts of things like that. So it's really worthwhile. So if you contact Bandby, they're in the phone book. If you've got a good memory, 6779 1693.
Yeah, good luck with that.
Yeah, but anyway.
This video is going up on YouTube, so you can check the phone number later.
Yeah, but the door's open. That's the bottom line.
All right, I think I saw a hand shoot up the back. You have a question up there? Yeah. Oh, I'll get to Kirsty afterwards.
More of a comment, I suppose. But thanks, Michelle, for telling us about Burke Wills and how they died of Nadu. There's a great book written by Sarah Murgatroyd. I don't know if anyone's read that book. It's an awesome book about Burke Wills. And not only did they die from inappropriate use of Nadu, but Sarah Murgatroyd says that they actually fired shots over the heads of the Aboriginal people that were trying to correct the wrong that was being done by, they could see them poisoning themselves and they were trying to help. And so it's really just a comment to say thank you so much for the book you've written, and I can't wait to read it because I think it's a long time coming that we sort of start to embrace all of that knowledge that's out there. So thank you.
All right, thank you. Kirsty, you got one? You can clap, that's fine.
Oh, yeah. Excuse my ignorance, but in Australia, is there any research that's being done to compare traditional ecological knowledge to what we know about ecological systems through a more modern scientific process? And I ask only because there's some really stunning research from around the world that I know of, and the stuff that I really like was in North American Indian and Indigenous cultures, that they are more precise, more consistent and more accurate with their predictions of where salmon are spawning and where migratory animals go to than any of our modern kind of modelling or monitoring systems are. Is there anything like that in Australia happening?
Yeah, I think there is. One example is Professor Nick Reed, the archaeologist at UNE. He published some papers recently about comparing Aboriginal myths or legends, like stories, with archaeological history, and a lot of the stories talk of a great flood or some major natural event that occurred, and when you compare that to the archaeological history, that actually did happen then, and so that there's a lot of truth to a lot of these stories that people put down as myths. And similar to out at Lightning Ridge, they talk about crocodiles, and you go out to Lightning Ridge, you're like, why are they talking about crocodiles out here? But actually there were prehistoric crocodiles out there in the megafauna, and the Aboriginal people lived with them for like 20,000 years before they went extinct. So a lot of the things that colonists might put down as myths or stories are actually true, and they come from truth. And similarly, in Kakadu at the moment, they've got a big challenge with climate change, with the temperatures warming, with saltwater intrusion coming up into their freshwater ecosystems. And it's the Aboriginal people who live out on country, they're the ones who are noticing like there's sharks up, right up the top of rivers now, and the saltwater crocodiles are moving right up the rivers, and all of those natural observations that people who've only got that connection to country, not just now, but over many generations, that know that those things aren't normal. It's their observations that are really informing science.
Remember there was something in the news a couple of years ago about molecular studies they did on palm trees about timing, coming up with a date of when they arrived in Australia, and finding out that it actually matched Aboriginal stories about when those plants arrived in the country. I thought that was amazing. We're going around collecting up trivia answers. We'll see who the winner is. But we've got time for about 2 more questions. Who wants to get in? It's your last chance. Yes? Where's our microphone? It's coming up.
Thank you, and thank you to all the speakers. It was really interesting. Maarten, when you spoke about plants and soils, you used a lot of what could be described as like anthropomorphic language in describing the intentionality of plants, even saying something along the lines of, so my children can be okay or something. But I know that there's a lot of research coming out now that shows that plants have incredible capacities for things like memory and learning and things that we associate not just with like animals and mammals, but particularly with humans as well. And so I wonder, in your own work on, soils and networks and things like that, if that sort of language that you're using is reflecting that kind of knowledge, and if you could say something a bit more about the way plants are really being shown to be quite cognitively complex despite not having
brains.
Our cognitive architecture.
Yeah, that has all to do with epigenetics. Like genes in any living organism can change themselves to the place that they live. So genes, like it's exactly the same DNA. And in my talks I always use like the bees, like with a queen bee in the middle of workers. And then the queen bee is like 50% bigger, has a different color and a different ego. But the DNA is exactly the same. So the active genes of the queen have changed from the workers. And that's like a larvae in the hive of the bees got special food from the workers right from the start. And that special food, like high protein and all that stuff, that became then the queen. So plants and animals, they have the epigenetics, the genes that are adjusting themselves to the surrounding, and then a plant can live in that environment better because it's adjusted to the local environment. So if we then have all the microbes in the soil, they do the same thing. The plant then knows that they are there, and you get this association, the symbiosis, that they work for each other. And any farm that has experience, like you buy a good ram or a good bull, and on the property the first year, so the first drop is useless, and then just don't abandon it, because if you persist, then those genes will express themselves in the next generations, adjusted to the local environment. So genes adjust themselves to the ecosystem that the genes grow in. And the same with us humans. The genes adjust themselves, like I talked to the kids in the schools the last 2 days, and then I can give the story as well. Like, you are a mix of the genes of your father and your mother. But the cell quality of your body as a baby was the cell quality of your parents at the time of conception. So because the genes had changed in the parents, like in the first 25 years of your life, all the free living in the late teens and early 20s, and then the genes adjust themselves. So that's why we see those drops in health of children now, all the complexities of food intolerances and allergies, and every generation gets earlier sick, more sick, because we have changed our genes in the wrong way with our free living and all the chemicals and all the special so-called better things that we do with our body. So we have to climb back up. And those of you that are interested in that, to read more about it, if you Google Pottenger cat study, Pottenger, then there's a doctor in the United States who did a study with cats in that field of epigenetics. And it's absolutely mind-blowing.
All right, we have one.
I just want to make a comment on that, because I don't think it's the genes that's changed. I don't think the genes change, it's the expression of the genes.
Yeah, that's what I say. The genes become active and non-active.
And the phenotype that results from that.
The genes stay the same, but they become active and non-active.
All right.
So they switch on and switch off.
The genes themselves don't change.
They switch on and switch off.
Well, there's mechanisms that
Yeah.
result in differences in, I suppose, the expression of the products of the genes.
Yeah. But that means that they switch off and switch on.
All right, you guys can grab a drink after this and not that one out. And for one very quick last question. Anyone's got one? Yes? You can have this.
Yeah. So I did a mushroom growing workshop over the weekend, and the guy who ran it said that most of our knowledge about growing mushrooms is from Europe, and I was wondering if there was any local knowledge. No? Okay, that answers my question. Wow, hear those crickets? Yeah. Okay, that answers my question. Thank you.
That was a great question to end on, guys. Well done. Before we finish things up, do we have a trivia? We got to do our trivia winners. We got to do our lucky door prize. Is this the winning one on top? All right. Where's Team Mornong? Anyone? Congratulations, guys. You get signed copies of all these books. Well done. Any other hilarious trivia names I should know about? What?
Whoever came last was the name of the team. Number 3 on there. They actually came last.
The team and in last place came in last place with 10 points. Well done. We've got our lucky draw prize. We're going to scooch over here. Harry, it's your turn to be lovely assistant. I'm going to get you to draw a number. Of our
Find your own lucky, yeah.
Oh, you wouldn't believe that.
Do we have D55? Anyone got D55? Oh, yes. Round of applause for D55. Get a subscription to Cosmos Magazine. All right, we will get your email address at the end and get you all sorted. Congratulations. Guys, can you join me in thanking our guests one more time? Now, if you enjoyed this, we're back. We're doing this many times this year. The next event is in May, the 14th to the 16th. It's a 3-day science festival. Anyone heard of Pint of Science before? Yes, good. So the Pint of Science Festival is happening here. It's happening in May. So 3 days in a row. It's going to cover all sorts of different topics. I had them written down, lost them. But there's all sorts of stuff about farming futures and medicine and all sorts of stuff. So, don't forget to grab your books on the way out. Don't forget to grab your seasonal calendars. Thanks so much for coming. We'll see you next time. Thank you. Thanks so much, guys. That was great.